Welcome to Two Cents Wanted. Now, Bleach is a story full of prodigies. Well-known prodigies like Gin, Toshiro, and Aizen, and less well-known like Yushiro, Soifon, and Akon. And I definitely want to make a video about the best generation of prodigies in Bleach, but that's for another day. So let's get into today's video. First, let's define terms, shall we? Prodigy. A prodigy is a person, especially a young one, endowed with exceptional qualities or abilities. Now that youth part is very important. Savant and prodigy are almost the same in their terms, and it's going to be very important to differentiate between the two. So youth and natural ability matter, and that's just one criteria for the video. The other criteria for this list is tangibility. For me to determine whether they are prodigy, I need to see them in their formative years. I can't just go off of the fact that I've always been strong, because that tells me nothing. Another example, I need to see how young they are when they perform these feats. If two people are around the same age when they perform similar feats, the tiebreaker will be who has less formal training. To clarify, just because someone is the fastest character doesn't make them prodigious in speed. They could have worked diligently for a long time to hone it. I'm going to give examples of prodigies in different areas and then select from the pool of people the one I believe stands above the rest. For those wondering if it's Ichigo all the way down, no, it's not. I've really limited the categories because you could break them down into so many different things. So if I didn't cover a category you wanted, let me know in the comments section so I can address it. So let's get into the video. Intelligence. For this one, I just wanted to go with the scientist because it's easier. But in actuality, that wouldn't be fair because intelligence takes many forms. When I take a look at the scientist group, we have Akon, Aizen, Kisuke, Mayuri, and the lot. The problem is, I don't know how old they are when they made these things like the Hogyoku, Nemu, and Bankai repairing. Kubo isn't very clear about giving ages in the series, and that's probably because how long characters actually can live, so it creates a bit of an issue. There are other ways to be intelligent. For example, we have the Soul Reaper Academy that has made people like Gin, Kaien, and Shuhei look like academic prodigies. If the statements for their academic prowess were about their grades and how quickly they graduated, you could make the argument that they don't apply here for this list, but because it is talking about how quickly they graduated, it shows their natural aptitude. With even someone like Gin dipping his toe in the laborious experimentation side with the likes of Aizen, if we go based on that information, based on how young someone is when they perform these feats, like I said earlier, I have to go with Gin. He passes the Soul Reaper Academy in a year, meaning that he has the ability to take in knowledge and apply it to a degree that his teachers thought he was a full-grown adult and worthy of a place among the seated officers up to 3rd seat. He was noted to be slightly younger than Byakuya and grew up in the poorer parts of Rukongai, meaning zero formal education, yet already worthy of a 3rd seat. It's massively impressive. Add in the fact that Aizen went out of his way to recruit him and bring him into his experimentation plans, and was simultaneously worried about Gin the entire time, just backs all of this up. Hell, he talked Aizen into revealing Kyoku Suigetsu's weakness. Now, I originally had Akon here because he seems even younger than Gin in Turn Back the Pendulum around that same time, when he becomes part of the research and development division. But then I reread Turn Back the Pendulum and I realized Kisuke hired a lot of young scientists, so that wasn't special in and of itself. Akon's one major feat is being put in Maggot's nest, but I don't know the exact reasons on why that occurred, so I can't really speculate from there. So if you want to go with one of the older guys like Mayuri, I don't blame you. But I also want to include Toshiro here because he did the exact same thing Gin did by passing in a year. However, I don't see any of this applied in any real way. On top of the fact that Toshiro was quite possibly older than Gin when he did his test, he also lived near the Sarete in District 1 in better conditions with better availability to education than Gin did. So I think based on pure, untouched intelligence, it's Gin. Strength. This belongs to Kenpachi, and I don't think it's close or even really worthy of discussion. At around what passes for the age of 12-15, Kenpachi was swapping with arguably the strongest Soul Reaper in history at that moment and overwhelming her. We're not sure exactly how the fight played out, but Unohana admits to his strength. Also, Kenpachi sealed away his own abilities so that Unohana wouldn't die in that fight. This not only confirms his power, but essentially shows that an older Kenny is still just tapping into what he was born with. Then later, in Soul Society arc, Kenpachi is seen overwhelming Sajin Komamura in strength, when Sajin has the advantage in every physical measurement. And I don't want to hear any spiritual pressure amp strength. Kenny had his eye patch on and was fighting someone else at the time. Then, what he performs later in the 1,000-Year Blood War, looking at the meteor, this is easily Kenpachi. Spiritual pressure. Again, this is pretty easily Kenny. His spiritual pressure is monstrous. At around the age of 12, 15-ish, he is capable of cutting and killing the Kenpachi, a captain whose power rivals that of most of the other Gote by herself. And what makes it crazier is Araki had to weaken himself. Kenpachi may be the Horus, Jesus, or Anakin Skywalker of Bleach. He is just a mass of spirit energy, seemingly an immaculate birth in Rukongai, as if Soul Society just spat him out. Or maybe he's photoplasm conglomerated into a being, who knows? I bet Kubo does. But, back on topic, Aizen, Gin, Toshiro, and Ichigo are also easily contenders for this spot as well. Kenpachi just has more natural spiritual pressure at a younger age than all of them. Ichigo couldn't tap into his spiritual pressure until it was unlocked, and even then his body couldn't handle it, while Kenpachi could handle his own. We also don't know how strong naturally born Soul King candidates like Ichigo are. I don't think Hakone is a good example, seeing as they were created, and even still, pound for pound, he isn't Kenny's equal in the spiritual pressure arena anyway. Aizen is indeterminable, but the fact that his potential power is that of a Soul King replacement is terrifying. Aizen didn't reach his transcendence until fusing with the Hogyoku, while Kenny trained and was already technically on the cusp of this as a young man. Gin being superior to a third seat is amazing, but pales in comparison to being stronger than Kenpachi Unohana. Toshiro had a Bankai and spiritual pressure of that on the level of a third seat as well. He had it before he even became a Gotei 13 member, but he was already much older than Hinamori, Renji, and Rukia. But even if he was younger, it still pales in comparison to Zaraki. The final character I will put in this category, and first novel character mentioned, is the 7th Kenpachi, Kuryoshiki. Although he is older by the time we see him, his spiritual pressure is strong enough to get him a Zero Squad membership and able to scare Vasto Lordi back into their holes. Again, however, Kenny is still stronger at a younger age. Kido. Kido is almost impossible to make a determination of because it's technically an art form. It's something you have to learn. Now, we do know you can use something similar to Kido with just natural spirit energy, but Kubo honestly never shows this. He only showed it once with Rukia and Renji, and he never goes any further with it. So with that, I believe I only have 4 real options here: Hinamori, Soifone, Sanosuke, and Aizen. Looking at Hinamori, her natural aptitude for Kido is commented on by almost every single person who talks about her, and she was essentially a monster in the academy, and right now still has more time to grow. She is flat out stated to be a Kido master twice, and it's reinforced in the data books, and is on full display when she weaved together 3 Kido spells unseen and unfelt in order to take out the Trust BCS. Plus, she is practiced in Kaido, an arguably more difficult form of Kido. Soifone's argument is convincing as well. At a younger age than Yoruichi, she invented, completed, and mastered Shunko all by herself. Yoruichi and Soifone simultaneously inventing Shunko is the same as Kisuke and Aizen doing the same thing with Hogyoku. Soifone doing this also is more impressive than Yushiro performing a similar feat because he had Yoruichi to teach him, and by the time she taught him, she had already mastered the Shunko technique. We also see Soifone casually throwing out chantless Kido. That's something else to get over Yushiro. Sosuke Aizen is impressive due to having overwhelming Kido power as a lieutenant. Now, I'm not looking at the power of the spell, but the speed of the casting. He casted Bakudo number 81 Danku with no chant. A chantless Bakudo in the 80s is scary impressive, but that's not all. We also can speculate that the creation of Hogyoku should require some level of Kido ability. Unfortunately, we don't know how much skill it requires, nor how old Aizen is as a lieutenant, so gauging whether he is the most prodigious in Kido is kind of difficult. Sanosuke Yamada is a Kaido prodigy. His Kaido ability is the best in Seirete, and we know him to be slightly older than Hanataro and Isane, but younger than the likes of Unohana. He was promoted from lieutenant to noble clan doctor, and is capable of creating a being with Kaido, with some assistance. With all of that, I think this is an impressive list of magic users. If you were twisting my arm, I'd probably lean toward Hinamori as the most prodigious in Kido usage. She can use Kido and Kaido, which gives her feats in both categories of magic. She is seemingly the youngest when performing these feats as well, possibly being the same age as Izuru, Renji, and Rukia, or even younger. Sanosuke is a close second. If I had more confirmation on his age, I'd put him as the number 1. Soifon creating Shunko is scary impressive, and it is stated that one has to master Hakuda and Kido first in order to use it, but in my opinion, it doesn't seem to get as complicated as mixing multiple Kido seemingly without a chant. Sword Prodigy. This is an impossible determination. There are some terrifying sword prodigies in Bleach. Ichigo, for example, was capable of matching swordsmen with hundreds of years of experience with a few weeks of training. Then after some serious combat against Ikkaku, Renji, and Kenpachi, he would go on to duel quite well with the Zanjutsu master in Byakuya. This is an insane leap in ability. Another rival for this is Kenpachi of Zaraki, but his is harder to determine because we know, especially now from the anime, that Kenny's sword technique is honed against Unohana. Seriously, he was copying her techniques like he has a Sharingan. The problem for Kenny is I can only use young him, and I don't know how much of his early wins were finesse or power. Gin Ichimaru was capable of gutting a third seat with a wakizashi with little to no difficulty, putting his technique with a sword in 1 year above most career Soul Reapers. Gin continues to use a wakizashi throughout the series to overwhelm his opponents, like Ichigo. This is important because a wakizashi is a very short bladed weapon, so he's always fighting opponents with greater range, ironic when you think about it. Hell, in his exchanges with Ichigo and FKT, you could argue he got the better of those exchanges. Two other candidates are the first non-Soul Reapers on this list, Stark and Ukiura. Stark and Ukiura in their years never used swords as hollows until their formal training under Tosen in the Espada. Ukiura was capable of equaling and besting that same Ichigo with arguably only a few months training from Tosen. Stark, being the last recruited Espada, would have had less training than the other Espada, and maybe the same amount as Ichigo, around 2 months max, and was capable of not only matching and deducing Shinsui Kyoraku's swordplay, but doing so with a single and dual blades. Normally, I would say this gets Stark over Ichigo, but 1,000 Year Blood War Ichigo goes out and gets 2 blades himself. So, based on time frame, Stark living a long time, I have to go with Ichigo. Battle IQ. The only 2 characters who genuinely come to mind when it comes to battle IQ is Stark and Ichigo. These 2 have scary ability to analyze and deconstruct their opponent mid-battle. Stark did it to 4 different characters in a matter of 2 fights. He was even analyzing the other Espada fights around him while he was in the middle of his own. However, the only reason he loses this to Ichigo is youth. Stark, being a Vassal Lorde, has lived a long time and has collective combat experience. This outstanding battle IQ could have been honed through those years. Ichigo just seems to come natural to him. Reread any fight, whether it be Ikkaku, Renji, Byakuya, Ukiura, or Yuha. Ichigo is constantly watching and dissecting. He even calls out how there is a subtle difference in Ukiura's swordsmanship. Now, there are other characters like Kisuke, Mayuri, and Aizen who have good battle IQ, but they beat you before the battle even starts, so they don't really count for this one. Hand-to-hand combat, Yoruichi. Hand-to-hand combat was also a difficult one. There are a lot of young characters who are good with throwing hands, but this is going to be the first time we have a human character on this list. 2, in fact. Yoruichi, Tatsuki, Chad, Soifon are all good picks here. Chad, I believe, honed his ability as a punk kid on the street, but his fighting ability may have come from his size. But we do know Chad can throw hands as a young teen with hollows, who almost exclusively use hand-to-hand combat, so that is impressive. And he joins a boxing gym. Tatsuki has a black belt in karate, she is a national champion, and can even throw hands with males. She is formidable and respected by everyone for her talent. She even turned Orihime into a beast. The issue here is Tatsuki's family home is the dojo, so she almost had no choice in being this good. Soifon was one of the most formidable members of her lesser noble family. They specialize in hand-to-hand combat, and she was the best of them. Handpicked by Yoruichi, Yoruichi got her to her peak potential, and this is reflected in the data book. As stated before, you need to be a master in Hakudo and Kido to master Shunko, so this bodes well for both Yoruichi and Soifon. And finally, Yoruichi Shihoin. I think she takes this. Yoruichi is the first female head of her clan, and as Soifon put it, she attained this with her transcendent Hakudo ability. She also invented several Hakudo techniques as pointed out by Soifon in her battle against Gio Vega. I think we can cut and dry call this for Yoruichi. Speed. Speed was very difficult. There are really two kinds of speed in Bleach. There is your unaided speed, meaning your foot speed and combat speed, while also Shunpo speed. For this, I decided to look at speed techniques because baseline speed can be enhanced with spirit energy. If we were just using the natural speed category, it would be easily Kenpachi. He isn't really using Shunpo in the series. All of Kenny's feats are pure foot speed. But if we're going to look at the other route, we have 4 candidates. Yoruichi is first. I mean, we don't have much about her speed at a young age, but we know she has the title of Flash Goddess, meaning she is the most exceptional user of this technique alive. Next would be Soifon. I mean, honestly, her speed was genuinely praised by Aizen, and she was capable of matching Yoruichi at a younger age than Yoruichi. It just kind of speaks for itself. Next is Ichigo. Some may be surprised by him being here, but Ichigo's usage of Shunpo came natural to him. He was accidentally using it at first, and after witnessing it from Byakuya and Yoruichi, was able to elevate his level to theirs. Hell, his Bankai speciality is to drastically increase his speed in both the original version and the full-bring version of Tensei Zangetsu. Finally, we have a novel character in Hikone. I think Hikone pulls this one out just above Ichigo and Yoruichi. Hikone is capable of mixing the different high-speed movement techniques they have access to, like Shunpo, Bringer Light, Sonido, and Hirinkaku, to what is likened to almost teleportation in the novel. Hikone at such a young age is capable of mastering all of this as if it's second nature, and keeping up with Zaraki himself. So I think it's Hikone with how deftly they're able to perform these speed feats. Now when we look at the overall winner, the best prodigy in Bleach is Kenpachi. Kenpachi of Zaraki, the true heir to the legacy of Kenpachi. So this one wasn't too crazy. Before the list was even started, I thought it was going to come down to Gin, Kenny, Ichigo, and Aizen, because honestly, that's how Kubo portrays them in the series. Ichigo and Kenny have 2 category wins, so they are matched there, but Kenny popped up in more categories than Ichigo, and in the same ones Ichigo did. So I'm going to give it to Kenny. Now, I do think if I added a couple more categories like growth, then Ichigo probably would have pulled ahead, and he probably is the best overall prodigy in the series, but just for the sake of this list, he is behind Kenny. If you're wondering why Aizen isn't the overall best prodigy, that's because in the Spirits Are Forever With You novels, he kind of admits to being afraid to fight Kenny without a Hogyoku, and we don't really know anything about his backstory, so I can't speculate on how good he was as a child. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's see if we can get the viewership back to 1K at least. That hiatus really killed us. Special thanks to my Discord, they helped a lot with this video, especially the speed pick with Hikone. Remember, like and subscribe, leave a comment about your thoughts, especially about other categories. Gin was more of a prodigy than Aizen. Bye.